You know, there's not a lot of vehicles on the road that are nearly as iconic as the Jeep Wrangler. Everybody, whether you drive one or not, knows what a Jeep Wrangler is. That's mainly because Jeep, over the last 80 years, hasn't changed a whole lot. Still carry the trapezoidal wheel wells, still have the round headlights, the flat windshield, which most of us at one point in our lives have broken. But the most iconic feature of the Jeep Wrangler and the Jeep branded products altogether is the 7-slot grille. Now, I've heard a lot of theories, a lot of conspiracies, and a lot of wild ideas as to where that 7-slot grille came from and why Jeep uses it. But you know what? I did a little digging, and I found out the actual reason that Jeep utilizes the 7-slot grille. So you know what? Put aside everything you think you know about the brand and listen up, because this may actually surprise you. Welcome back to Jeeping for Beginners, folks. Once again, my name is Josh, and today I am so excited to be talking about the topic of the iconic 7-slot grille that appears on the front of the majority of all Jeep products for the last 80 years. There's been a lot of fan theories as to why that grille has 7 slots, but after doing a little bit of research, I actually found out the truth. It surprised me, so I'm pretty sure it's going to surprise you. But let's not waste any more time and dive right into the topic, shall we? All right, folks, so before we dive into the actual reason why to this day Jeep branded products still carry a 7-slot grille, we need to talk about a little bit of the history. So as everybody is aware, Jeep was introduced originally in 1941. It was built specifically for World War II and for military use. It wasn't actually a civilian vehicle until 1945. But during those 4 years, the Jeep didn't actually have a 7-slot grille. In fact, it was a 9-slot grille that was on the front of the Jeep Wrangler, or what was then known as the Willys MB, during World War II. That 9-slot grille was actually a concept from the Ford Motor Company to not only allow enough airflow in order to keep the motor cool, but to hold the headlights in place and to keep the front end of the vehicle together. It wasn't until 1945 when the CJ, or the civilian Jeep, was introduced to the civilian population, and that one carried a 7-slot grille. But why 7 slots and not the original 9 slots? Well, that's also an interesting detail. So in about the year 1940, the United States government approached 3 different auto manufacturers and asked them to design a vehicle in the quarter-ton status that had operational 4-wheel drive, ground clearance, and the ability to pretty much go anywhere that they can think of trying to make it go. Those 3 car companies that were involved at the very beginning was the Ford Motor Company, Willys, Overland, and Bantam. Now, after all 3 companies submitted their designs to the U.S. government, the one that won out was Willys Overland. Their vehicle met everything that the government asked them to do. However, the amount that the government asked them to produce, they were not capable of satisfying the order in a timely fashion. So they reached out to the other 2 car companies, Ford Motor Company and Bantam, to help them not only produce the vehicles, but to get them shipped overseas to be used during World War II. Ford and Bantam and Willys all have their little bit of touch on the Jeep Wrangler. Bantam designed the wheel wells, which we still use today. The trapezoidal design, beautiful design. Willys designed the 4-wheel drive system using Spicer components, which we still use today. But we're talking about the grille. The grille was actually designed by Ford Motor Company. Now, originally in 1941, when the Willys MB was released to the United States government, the grille had 9 slots in it. The 9-slotted grille was there basically to hold up the headlights, to keep the vehicle cool, and some fan theories even suggest that the Army personnel would remove the grille and actually use it to cook food. Actually, there's no way to prove that, so I don't even know if that's true. But Thought it was an interesting little tidbit. However, in 1945, when the war was over and Willys decided that they wanted to continue to produce this vehicle and release it to the American people, they had to come up with a different model. And that is where we get the civilian Jeep, or the CJ. Okay, so that brings us to 1945, when the first civilian Jeep was introduced to the American population. Now, in 1945, it had a 7-slot grille, and this generated a lot of fan theories. One, that maybe it was 7 different guys that designed the Jeep and they wanted to be represented on the grille. Or that it took 7 months to design the civilian version of the Jeep before it was released, therefore represented by the 7-slot grille. Those are just 2 more fictional fan theories. So my favorite reason that I've heard many times over the years as to why the Jeep has a 7-slot grille is because it was the first vehicle to traverse terrain on all 7 continents on our planet. Sadly, this is also not the reason it has a 7-slot grille, which is too bad, because that's one of the coolest fan fictions that's out there. So let's continue with the history lesson. In 1945, when the original American version of the CJ, the civilian Jeep, also known as the American Willys, first introduced with the 7-slot grille, there were a lot of questions as to why. Well, here's why. For the 4 years that it was in production for the military, Willys Overland was utilizing Ford and Bantam to help them produce the vehicles to be shipped overseas for World War II. However, in 1945, Willys Overland decided that they were going to be the exclusive owner and releasing it to the American people. At that point, they actually discovered that Ford had trademarked the 9-slot grille on the front of the Willys MB. So in order to release it, they either would have needed to purchase the trademark from Ford or continue to have Ford involved with the production of the CJ. Since Willys decided that they wanted to have sole proprietorship over the vehicle, they actually redesigned the grille. They dropped 2 of the slots, which turns out was more than enough to register the 7 slots as a trademark and bypass Ford's ownership of the grille on the front of the Willys MB. So there it is, folks. The reason that the Jeep has a 7-slot grille starting in 1945 was because of a trademark infringement with Ford. Who would have thought? So basically, for the last 80 years, that 7-slot grille has been a slap in the face for the Ford Motor Company since Willys won out the original contract and secured the original brand that we now know as Jeep. I thought that that was pretty cool, and I wanted to share that with you. But here's something else that I want to share with you, which is actually a little scary, a little frustrating, and for all of us Jeep fans is something that we may need to stand up and do something about. Are you ready? All right, starting not that long ago, and a lot of you are aware, Chrysler and Fiat no longer own the Jeep brand. It's owned by a brand new formed company called Stellantis. And Stellantis has been going nuts buying up other car companies in an effort to become one of the largest auto manufacturers in the world. However, when a hostile takeover like that happens, changes tend to be made. Stellantis is toying with the idea of removing the iconic 7-slot grille. They're toying with the idea of removing the A-pillar design with the flat windshield, toying with the idea of removing the solid axle or live axle driveline that has made the Jeep Wrangler what it is since 1941. They're toying with this because they want to meet certain guidelines when it comes to the EPA regulations for electric vehicles, for better fuel economy, for better safety, for all in all, more modernized version of the Jeep branded products. All right, folks, so let's be honest. Jeep has not changed its heritage in over 80 years, and it's still the #1 most customizable vehicle on the road, one of the #1 selling four-wheel drive SUVs on the road, and to this day holds its value better than just about any other branded vehicle on the road. Are we going to let Stellantis do that? I sincerely hope not. Folks, driving a Jeep is driving a piece of history, a piece of heritage. Okay, driving a Jeep represents a brand that hasn't changed since its dawn of its existence to fight and win World War II. So now, as the fans of the brand, the fans of the vehicle, and those of us who have them, love them, and use them, it may be time to once again stand up and fight. We cannot let Stellantis ruin 80 years of heritage. Don't you agree? All right, folks. So, in quick review, there's a lot of fan theories that the 7-slot grille came from the military, that it came from the number of people that designed the Jeep, or that it came from the 7 continents of the world, and the Jeep being the first vehicle to traverse that. Whether or not any of that is actually true, none of that can be confirmed. What can be confirmed is that in 1945, Willys Overland bumped into a trademark infringement and had to adjust the design of their vehicle in order to release their liability in owing Ford any of the proceeds. So 1945 until now in 2022, the Jeep has maintained its classic look with a 7-slot grille, trapezoidal wheel wells, round headlights, and a flat windshield. Why? Because that is its tribute to the original Willys MB. Once again, folks, my name is Josh. This is Jeeping for Beginners. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that that was awesome information for some of you, although I'm sure a few of you actually knew that. So in the meantime, I'm going to let you go. So stay safe, happy Jeeping, and look out for the next one, because we will see you next time.